In the soft glow of a Michigan morning, the Allen family home appeared as a picture-perfect slice of the American dream. Rows of fresh vegetables lined the backyard garden, the faint sound of cats meowing echoed near the pool, and Ashley, the teenage daughter of Jimmy and Amy Allen, flashed a smile that suggested a life of contentment. But beneath this polished surface, cracks were forming, ready to shatter everything. Jimmy Allen, 37, was the family's breadwinner, a self-described Type A personality, ambitious, orderly, and always striving to improve himself and those around him. Amy, a stay-at-home wife, tended to the house, their 5 cats, the pool, and supported Ashley's sports activities. On the surface, they were the ideal family, hitting the gym together, growing their own food, and living the healthy lifestyle Jimmy often boasted about. Yet, as is often the case in true crime stories, the truth was far more complex than what met the eye. Jimmy and Amy had moved to Michigan from Ocala, Florida, just a year before the tragedy unfolded. Their life seemed designed for perfection, but subtle tensions simmered beneath the facade. Amy carried a complicated past. She gave birth to her son, Caleb, in 1997 at the age of 13, a burden too heavy for a young girl. Caleb was raised by his grandparents in Florida, so Amy could finish high school. When Amy met Jimmy in her late teens, he quickly assumed the role of Caleb's stepfather, but their relationship was never smooth. Caleb, a sensitive teenager, often felt stifled by Jimmy's controlling nature, and at 17, he left home to live with his grandparents. This decision not only fractured his bond with Jimmy, but also had profound consequences for Amy, who was forced to sever contact with her son, deepening the isolation that defined her life. Ashley, the couple's shared daughter, was the heart of their world. A vibrant teenager, she was active in sports and seemed oblivious to the undercurrents of tension in the family. Yet, her conflicting statements later in the investigation would become a critical piece of the puzzle. The Allens maintained an outward image of unity. They cooked breakfast together, shared laughs, and participated in activities like rock climbing in Ann Arbor 3 times a week. Jimmy frequently highlighted their healthy lifestyle, as if to prove he was a devoted husband and father. But these details, when viewed through the lens of the investigation, became a veneer masking a darker reality. The family's tension stemmed from small but accumulating grievances. Jimmy's controlling nature ensured that everything revolved around his desires. He wasn't just the breadwinner. He dictated every aspect of family life, from meals to how Amy and the children spent their time. Amy, introverted by nature, appeared to accept her passive role, but her silence didn't equate to satisfaction. On the rare occasions she spoke up, like when she opposed Jimmy's idea to move back to Florida, her opinions were dismissed or sparked arguments. This imbalance, coupled with Amy's isolation from her family, created a suffocating atmosphere where every action was under Jimmy's scrutiny. To outsiders, the Allen family was a story of stability. Within the walls of their home, it was a ticking time bomb, waiting for a spark to ignite. Beneath the idyllic surface of the Allen family's life, Jimmy Allen ruled with an iron fist. His control extended beyond major decisions, infiltrating every detail of Amy and the children's lives. Amy's parents, Caleb's grandparents, described Jimmy as a domineering husband who refused to let Amy have any independence, financial or emotional. Amy, once a young woman with potential despite her early pregnancy, was forced into the role of a homemaker, tending to the house, cats, and children, while Jimmy held complete control over the family's finances. Whatever Jimmy wanted, Jimmy got, her parents bitterly told police, emphasizing that Amy's voice was rarely heard in their marriage. Jimmy monitored Amy with near-obsessive precision. Text messages recovered from Amy's phone revealed that he frequently sent her questions like, "Where are you? What are you doing?" accompanied by her exact location, as if he were tracking her every move. Whether through technology or direct surveillance, this behavior demonstrated a deep level of control, leaving Amy with little privacy. From social media to daily meal plans, every aspect of the Allen household required Jimmy's approval. Amy's parents revealed that he even dictated what Amy ate, reinforcing his dominance over her life. Jimmy's control wasn't limited to Amy, it extended to the children. With Caleb, Amy's son from a previous relationship, Jimmy imposed harsh discipline. In a chilling incident later recounted at trial, Caleb described a heated argument where he pushed Jimmy against a wall. Jimmy retaliated by turning Caleb around and choking him from behind, pinning him to the floor. "I was choked on the ground for what felt like forever," Caleb testified, recalling the struggle to breathe and the fear for his life. This incident not only highlighted Jimmy's violent tendencies, but also showed how he used physical force to suppress any challenge to his authority. Amy's parents confirmed that Jimmy frequently disciplined Caleb and Ashley too far, crossing the line from strictness to intimidation, creating a climate of fear within the family. Amy's isolation from her family was one of the starkest manifestations of Jimmy's control. After Caleb left home at 17 to live with his grandparents, Jimmy retaliated by forbidding Amy from contacting her son or her parents. This led to Amy having almost no contact with Caleb, seeing him only once at his high school graduation in 2017. Her parents insisted that Amy didn't choose this isolation. It was a consequence of Jimmy's need to keep her dependent. This isolation not only hurt Amy emotionally, but also created a void that pushed her toward a secret affair with George, a desperate attempt to escape her stifling marriage. Jimmy portrayed himself as a devoted husband, claiming he tried to help Amy overcome her isolation and addiction to playing World of Warcraft. But Amy's family saw it differently. They believed Jimmy was the cause of her isolation, not her introverted personality. His control wasn't just a personality trait. It was a system designed to ensure Amy had no voice, no freedom, and no way out, until her secret affair with George came to light, setting the stage for a tragedy that would unravel the Allen family's carefully curated facade. While Jimmy Allen built a fortress of control around Amy, she found a secret escape, a 3-year affair with George, a married man from the East Coast. From 2015 to 2018, Amy and George maintained a deep connection through text messages and video calls, a hidden world where Jimmy's watchful eyes couldn't reach. This affair wasn't just a rebellion against Jimmy's dominance, it was a lifeline for Amy, a chance to reclaim the freedom and love she lacked in her marriage. But this secret, when uncovered, would become a pivotal piece of the puzzle in the tragedy that ended her life, fueling the legal battle to uncover the truth behind her death. Amy and George met online, and their relationship quickly evolved from casual conversations to a profound emotional and physical connection. Text messages recovered from Amy's phone revealed their frequent expressions of love and longing. "I love you," George wrote, and Amy replied, "I love you too." These words, exchanged in moments when Amy could steal away from Jimmy's scrutiny, showed she was living a parallel life, one where she could be herself, free from control. Though they met in person only twice, once for coffee in spring 2017 and once at a hotel later that year, their relationship was far from superficial. Their messages, described as explicit, included sexual undertones, proving Amy sought not just comfort but a deep ditto, a connection Jimmy knew nothing about. On the fateful day of the 14th of September 2018, Amy and George continued their communication, even as she sat beside Jimmy. During dinner with the family, George texted at 5:07 p.m., "I wish we could be together right now." Amy responded at 5:29, "I'm so excited to see you again." These messages showed Amy's commitment to the relationship, even planning to meet George in late October. Even during her argument with Jimmy at JR's hometown grill, Amy texted George right in front of her husband, a bold but risky move that heightened the tension between them. This act of defiance, though subtle, underscored her desire to break free from Jimmy's control. Amy took great care to hide her affair, even deleting some messages to avoid Jimmy's discovery. But Jimmy's controlling behavior, tracking her location, and questioning her actions made keeping this secret a constant battle. In his police interview, Jimmy insisted Amy was incapable of an affair due to her shy, introverted nature, a claim that crumbled when the messages were uncovered. The texts painted a picture of a woman desperate for freedom, love, and connection, elements absent from her marriage. This secret affair, when revealed during the investigation, would become a cornerstone of the prosecution's case, suggesting a motive for Jimmy's actions. Amy's affair with George wasn't just an escape, it was a dangerous rebellion. If Jimmy, with his controlling nature and history of violence, discovered or suspected her infidelity, it could have triggered a violent response. The messages from the day of her death, filled with promises of a future meeting, showed Amy had no intention of ending her life or her relationship with George. When uncovered, this secret affair not only illuminated Amy's emotional state, but also set the stage for the legal battle, raising questions about whether Jimmy's discovery of her betrayal pushed him to a breaking point, leading to the tragedy that unfolded in the basement that night. The morning of the 14th of September 2018 dawned like any other in the Allen household in Michigan. Sunlight filtered through the windows, casting a warm glow over the backyard garden, where rows of vegetables stood as a testament to the family's healthy lifestyle. In the kitchen, Amy Allen was preparing breakfast, the faint sound of music mingling with the clatter of pans. Ashley, the couple's teenage daughter, was getting ready for school, humming along to the tune, while Jimmy Allen, the self-assured patriarch, checked his schedule with his usual commanding presence. To an outsider, this scene painted a picture of domestic bliss, a family starting their day with warmth and routine. But beneath this carefully curated facade, tensions were brewing, setting the stage for a tragedy that would unravel just hours later. The Allen family's simmering dysfunction, Amy's secret affair, and the suffocating control of Jimmy were about to collide in a way no one could have predicted. Amy, as always, was the heart of the household's daily operations. She packed Ashley's lunch, fed the 5 cats, and ensured everything was in order before her daughter left for school. Ashley later told police that Amy seemed her usual self that morning, smiling and attentive, with no hint of the turmoil that would soon engulf their lives. But behind Amy's composed exterior lay a hidden world. She was not just a devoted mother and controlled wife. She was a woman secretly nurturing a 3-year affair with George, a married man from the East Coast. Text messages exchanged in stolen moments were her lifeline, a quiet rebellion against Jimmy's iron grip. That morning, as she went about her routine, there was no outward sign that this day would end in catastrophe, but the weight of her secret was ever present. Jimmy left for work around 7:30 a.m., carrying the confidence of a man who controlled every aspect of his family's life. His job, which he proudly described as the best I've ever had, provided financial stability and reinforced his role as the family's provider. Meanwhile, Amy stayed home, tending to the cats, the pool, and the household chores tasks Jimmy had imposed to keep her dependent. The family's tension wasn't overt that morning, but subtle signs like Amy's fleeting glances at her phone or the silence as Jimmy left hinted at the strain beneath the surface. Amy's parents would later tell police that her role as a homemaker wasn't a choice but a mandate, a way for Jimmy to ensure she had no independence. This dynamic, coupled with Amy's secret communications with George, was a ticking time bomb. By noon, Jimmy made an unexpected decision. He left work early, returning home at 12:30 p.m. He climbed into bed for a nap, a detail he later emphasized to police as part of his account of an ordinary day. While Jimmy slept, Amy continued her routine, preparing to pick up Ashley and her friend Kayla from school at 2:45 p.m. Kayla, a close friend, was staying for dinner, a common occurrence in the Allen household. Amy, ever the attentive mother, prepared a meal for the family, a scene Jimmy later described as part of their happy family life. But the reality was far more complex. While cooking and chatting with Ashley and Kayla, Amy was secretly texting George. At 5:07 p.m. during dinner, George sent a message. "I wish we could be together right now." Amy replied at 5:29. "I'm so excited to see you again." These exchanges, hidden from Jimmy's watchful eyes, were a dangerous act of defiance, one that could ignite the simmering tension in the household. Dinner unfolded with an air of normalcy, but the undercurrents of strain were palpable. Jimmy, with his controlling nature, may have sensed Amy's detachment, though he didn't yet know the full extent of her secret. Amy's focus on her phone, her quiet rebellion through texts with George, hinted at a woman yearning for freedom. The family's healthy lifestyle, gym visits, homegrown vegetables, and shared meals, was a facade that masked a deeper dysfunction. As the afternoon gave way to evening, the stage was set for a confrontation that would push the Allen family to the brink. Amy's secret affair, the tension in her marriage, and Jimmy's need for control were about to collide, leading to a night that would change everything. As the sun dipped below the horizon on the 14th of September 2018, the Allen family left their Michigan home to drop Ashley and her friend Kayla off at a high school football game in Tecumseh. Around 6:30 p.m., Jimmy and Amy sat side by side in the car, but the air between them was thick with unspoken tension. Jimmy drove with his usual commanding air, while Amy's eyes drifted to her phone, where messages from George, her secret lover, offered a fleeting escape from her husband's control. These texts, exchanged in the shadow of Jimmy's presence, were a quiet act of rebellion, but they also set the stage for a confrontation that would spiral into tragedy. The family's simmering tension, Amy's hidden affair, and the looming legal battle for justice were about to converge in a single, fateful evening. After dropping Ashley and Kayla at the game, Jimmy and Amy decided to unwind at a couple of local bars, a seemingly normal choice that would soon become the backdrop for a heated argument. They visited Ember's Bar and Grill before moving to JR's Hometown Grill and Pub, familiar spots in their small town. Under the dim lights of the bar, Jimmy brought up a bold plan: selling their Michigan home and moving back to Florida. For Jimmy, it was a logical step, a way to maintain his grip on the family's future. But Amy, suffocated by years of control, pushed back. "I hope that works out for you," she said sarcastically, a sharp rebuke that Jimmy later recounted to police as a sign of her unusual negativity. This exchange wasn't just about a move. It was a clash between Jimmy's need for control and Amy's growing defiance. Amy's sarcasm wasn't the only thing fueling the tension. While arguing with Jimmy, she was secretly texting George, right there at the bar. Messages recovered later showed her continuing their emotional connection, expressing excitement about their planned meeting in late October. This bold act, texting her lover in front of her husband, was a dangerous escalation, one that could have caught Jimmy's attention. His habit of monitoring Amy's every move, from her location to her daily routines, made her distractions suspicious. The argument at JR's hometown grill wasn't just about Florida. It was a manifestation of the deeper rift in their marriage, where Amy's secret affair was pushing her to assert herself, even at great risk. Frustrated and unwilling to stay with Jimmy, Amy made a striking decision. She walked home alone, captured on surveillance cameras at 7:58 p.m. This act of independence, a woman striding through the night, was both a defiance of Jimmy's control and a prelude to the tragedy. When she reached home, Amy took an extension cord to the basement, a detail that would later become central to the investigation. Jimmy, driving home alone, was likely seething from the argument and Amy's dismissive attitude. When he arrived, he checked on her in the basement, where their earlier dispute flared again. This time, it was about Jimmy accidentally slamming a door in her face as they left the bar, an act Amy believed was intentional. "It wasn't an accident," she snapped, according to Jimmy's later account. The argument lasted about 10 minutes, growing heated but unresolved. Jimmy left the basement, leaving Amy alone with the extension cord and her anger. He went upstairs, turned on Ace Ventura, a Jim Carrey movie, as if to distract himself from the mounting tension. This act, later cited by the defense as proof of Jimmy's normalcy, would be scrutinized by investigators as a potential attempt to establish an alibi. The evening, marked by a public argument, Amy's bold texting with George, and her retreat to the basement, was a powder keg waiting to explode. The family's tension, fueled by Jimmy's control and Amy's secret affair, had reached a breaking point, setting the stage for the devastating events that would unfold in the basement and spark a legal battle to uncover the truth. By 8:40 p.m., on the 14th of September 2018, the Allen household was cloaked in an oppressive silence, the kind that precedes a storm. Jimmy, after watching Ace Ventura upstairs, realized it was time to pick up Ashley from the football game. But before leaving, he decided to go back to the basement to make amends with Amy after their heated argument. What he found there would change everything. Amy lay unconscious on the floor, an extension cord nearby, and a cat litter box overturned. This moment, as Jimmy later described to police, was a gut-wrenching shock, but his actions in the aftermath would raise questions that fueled a legal battle for justice. The family's tension, Amy's secret affair, and Jimmy's controlling nature were about to collide in a scene that would haunt the investigation. Jimmy immediately called 911, his voice trembling as he reported that his wife was unconscious. "She's in the basement," he told the dispatcher, panic-lacing his words. "I pulled her up. I'm trying to do CPR." Following instructions, he attempted chest compressions, but when Officer Ben J. Horn arrived, the scene was eerily quiet. It was only when Horn announced his presence, police, that Jimmy's cries for help echoed through the house, as if cued by the officer's arrival. In the cramped basement, Horn found Jimmy kneeling beside Amy, sobbing and seemingly distraught, but Jimmy's behavior quickly raised red flags. He oscillated between intense sobs and unsettling calm, even stepping away to grab a new shirt after tearing his own in a dramatic display. In a bizarre moment, he smashed a bowl of potato chips in the kitchen, an act that struck Horn as oddly out of place in a life-or-death situation. As emergency medical technicians (EMTs) arrived, they found a faint pulse in Amy, a glimmer of hope that she might survive. She was placed on a stretcher and rushed to ProMedica Herrick Hospital, just 2 minutes away. But Jimmy's reaction to this news was chilling. Instead of relief, he appeared frustrated, a detail that sent alarm bells ringing for the officers. While EMTs worked to save Amy, Jimmy stayed behind, calling Ashley to tell her to stay put without revealing the full gravity of the situation. Moments later, he called his parents, sobbing, "I don't know what to do, Mom. It's awful." Yet, Officers noted a critical detail. Despite his cries, Jimmy's face showed no tears, a discrepancy that deepened suspicions about his sincerity. The basement became the focal point of the investigation. Amy had a faint mark near her neck, but none of the telltale injuries associated with hanging, such as deep ligature marks or broken neck bones, as Officer Horn noted. The basement ceiling, only about 7 feet high, made Jimmy's claim of Amy's self-harm implausible, given her 5'6" height. The extension cord and overturned litter box, which Jimmy pointed to as evidence of Amy's desperate act, didn't align with a suicide scenario. The space was too confined for Amy to have hanged herself without her feet touching the ground. This discrepancy, combined with the family's tension evident in the earlier bar argument and Amy's secret affair, suggested a darker truth. Investigators began to suspect the scene might have been staged. As EMTs left with Amy, officers remained to process the scene, noting its inconsistencies. Jimmy's behavior shifting from hysteria to calm, smashing a bowl, and showing frustration at Amy's faint pulse painted a picture of a man trying to control a narrative. He told police Amy had been upset after their argument, but he couldn't imagine her taking such an extreme step. Yet, his lack of tears and odd demeanor suggested otherwise. The basement, with its low ceiling and lack of struggle marks, became a puzzle that pointed away from suicide and toward something more sinister. This moment, as the ambulance lights faded into the night, marked the beginning of an investigation that would uncover Amy's secret affair, expose Jimmy's controlling nature, and ignite a legal battle to bring justice for a woman whose life ended in tragedy. As the flashing red and blue lights of police cars and ambulances pierced the Michigan night on the 14th of September 2018, the Allen household became the epicenter of a tragedy that was just beginning to unfold. Minutes after Jimmy Allen's frantic 911 call at 8:40 p.m., Officer Ben J. Horn stepped into the house, bracing himself for a heart-wrenching scene. Jimmy, who had just reported finding his wife Amy unconscious in the basement, was kneeling beside her, sobbing and attempting CPR. But as Horn entered, an eerie silence hung over the house, as if time itself had frozen. Only when he called out, "Police!" did Jimmy's cries for help echo through the home, almost as if prompted by the officer's presence. This fleeting moment planted the first seeds of doubt in Horn's mind, marking the start of an investigation that would unravel the dark secrets of the Allen family. In the cramped, dimly lit basement, Amy lay motionless on the floor, an extension cord and an overturned cat litter box nearby. Jimmy, his voice trembling, told Horn he had pulled Amy up and tried CPR as instructed by the 911 dispatcher, but his behavior told a different story. He swung between intense sobs and unsettling calm, answering questions with a clarity that seemed rehearsed. At one point, he stepped away from Amy's side to grab a fresh shirt after dramatically tearing his own, a move that struck Horn as peculiar. Even more bizarrely, he smashed a bowl of potato chips in the kitchen, an act that seemed wildly out of place amid a life-or-death crisis. These inconsistencies, though subtle, began to paint a picture of a man who might be hiding something, amplifying the tension that had long simmered in the Allen household. When emergency medical technicians, EMTs, arrived, they detected a faint pulse in Amy, a fragile thread of hope that she might survive. But Jimmy's reaction was chilling. Instead of relief, he appeared frustrated, a detail that sent alarm bells ringing for the officers. Amy was quickly placed on a stretcher and rushed to ProMedica Herrick Hospital, just 2 minutes away. Jimmy remained at the scene, calling his daughter Ashley to tell her to stay put without revealing the full gravity of the situation, his voice eerily calm. Moments later, he called his parents, sobbing. "I don't know what to do, Mom. It's awful." Yet, officers noted a critical discrepancy. Despite his dramatic cries, Jimmy's face showed no tears, deepening suspicions about the authenticity of his grief. The family's tension, evident from their earlier argument at the bar, and Amy's secret affair with George, began to emerge as pieces of a grim puzzle. The basement became a focal point for investigators. Amy had only a faint mark near her neck, lacking the deep ligature marks or broken bones typical of a hanging, as Officer Horn immediately noted. The basement ceiling, a mere 7 feet high, made Jimmy's claim that Amy had harmed herself implausible, given her 5'6" height. The extension cord and overturned litter box, which Jimmy pointed to as evidence of Amy's desperate act, didn't add up to a suicide scenario. The confined space meant her feet would have touched the ground, making it physically impossible. This, combined with the family's tension evident in the bar argument and Amy's secret affair, suggested something far more sinister. Investigators began to suspect the scene might have been staged to conceal a darker truth. As the EMTs departed with Amy, officers stayed to process the scene, cataloging its inconsistencies. Jimmy's behavior shifting from hysteria to calm, smashing a bowl, and showing frustration when Amy was found alive, suggested a man trying to control a narrative. He told police Amy had been upset after their argument, but insisted he couldn't imagine her taking such an extreme step. Yet, his tearless sobs and odd demeanor told a different story. The low ceiling, lack of struggle marks, and absence of typical hanging injuries pointed away from suicide. This moment, as the ambulance lights faded into the night, marked the beginning of an investigation that would uncover Amy's secret affair, expose Jimmy's controlling nature, and ignite a legal battle to bring justice for a woman whose life ended in tragedy. The Allen family's carefully crafted image was crumbling, revealing a world of control, betrayal, and hidden motives. As the dawn broke on the 15th of September 2018, the Allen household remained shrouded in the heavy silence of the previous night's tragedy. Officer Ben J. Horn and his colleagues returned to the scene, joined by Detective Larry Rothman, determined to piece together what had happened in that basement. The air was thick with unanswered questions, as if Amy's spirit lingered, demanding the truth. With the help of the family's cat, Louie, who wandered through the house, investigators combed every corner for clues to unravel the mystery of Amy's death. The family's tension, revealed through details of the earlier bar argument, and Amy's secret affair began to take center stage, laying the groundwork for a legal battle that would stretch over years. In their morning interview, Jimmy recounted the previous day with striking detail. He described a cheerful morning, with the family preparing breakfast together, Amy smiling as she packed Ashley's lunch. He went to work, returned early at 12:30 p.m. for a nap, while Amy picked up Ashley and her friend Kayla from school. Dinner was normal, he said, before they dropped the girls at the football game. Jimmy emphasized that Amy became upset after their bar argument, but he couldn't fathom her taking such a drastic step. His clarity and composure, however, raised red flags. He insisted Amy had no history of mental instability, yet her behavior at the bar, distant, constantly texting, didn't align with his portrayal of a content wife. This discrepancy fueled investigators' suspicions that Jimmy's story wasn't as straightforward as he claimed. Ashley, still reeling from the shock, offered a different perspective. In her initial interview, she insisted everything seemed normal that day. There were no arguments, she said, describing Amy as an introverted but emotionally stable mother with no signs of wanting to harm herself. Her statement, though simple, contradicted Jimmy's narrative of Amy's distress, deepening investigators' doubts. Could Amy, a devoted mother to Ashley, have acted so impulsively, as Jimmy suggested, or was something else being concealed? Ashley's words, though heartfelt, hinted at the complex dynamics within the family, where loyalty and truth were entangled. The investigation took a significant turn when Amy's parents, Caleb's grandparents, contacted the Tecumseh Police Department after learning of her death. They revealed that Jimmy waited 14 hours to notify them, a delay that struck them as suspicious. Meeting with police, they provided a wealth of information about Jimmy's controlling behavior. They described him as an oppressive husband who forbade Amy from contacting her family, including Caleb, after he left home at 17. They insisted Amy didn't choose to be a stay-at-home wife. It was Jimmy's way of keeping her dependent. Furthermore, Jimmy's harsh discipline of Caleb and Ashley often crossed into abuse, like the choking incident Caleb later recounted, raising the possibility that he could have acted similarly toward Amy. This testimony painted a picture of a marriage defined by control, not love, amplifying the tension that had long plagued the family. Though no immediate conclusions were drawn, officers meticulously searched the house, collecting Amy's phone and computer in hopes of uncovering clues about her mental state. The basement's low ceiling, only 7 feet, remained a glaring issue. Given Amy's 5'6" height, self-harm in such a confined space seemed physically implausible. The absence of typical hanging injuries, like deep ligature marks or neck fractures, further tilted investigators toward a homicide theory. Amy's secret affair with George, though not yet discovered, would soon emerge as a critical piece of the puzzle when her phone revealed the messages. The family's tension, illuminated by Amy's parents' accounts and Jimmy's odd behavior at the scene, tearless sobs, smashing a bowl, and frustration at Amy's faint pulse set the stage for a deeper investigation. The basement, with its low ceiling and lack of struggle marks, was no longer just a crime scene. It was the starting point of a legal battle to uncover whether Amy's death was a tragic suicide or a calculated act of murder driven by control and betrayal. On the 17th of September 2018, 3 days after Amy Allen was found unconscious in the basement of her Michigan home, the faint flicker of her life was extinguished at ProMedica Herrick Hospital. Despite the doctor's best efforts, Amy slipped away in the sterile silence of the ICU, leaving a void in the hearts of those who loved her, most notably her son Caleb and her parents in Florida. The autopsy report, released shortly after, delivered a chilling conclusion. Amy's cause of death was asphyxiation by strangulation, but whether it was suicide or murder remained an open question. Amy's death was not just the end of a personal tragedy, but the beginning of a relentless legal battle to uncover the truth, one that would expose the darkest secrets of the Allen family and lay bare the tension, control, and betrayal that defined her marriage to Jimmy. During the 3 days Amy clung to life in the hospital, the atmosphere at the Allen household grew heavier than ever. Jimmy, who portrayed himself as a devoted husband, showed little of the hope or desperation one might expect from a grieving spouse. Hospital staff noted that Jimmy rarely stayed by Amy's side, and when informed of her critical condition, he displayed a cold detachment rather than anguish. This behavior, coupled with his frustration when Amy was found with a faint pulse on the night of September 14, deepened investigators' suspicions. They began to wonder if Jimmy truly wanted Amy to survive, or if her survival posed a threat to secrets he was desperate to keep buried. The tension within the Allen family, which had simmered for years under Jimmy's iron control, now became the focal point of the investigation. Amy's parents, Caleb's grandparents, contacted the Tecumseh Police Department immediately upon learning of her death, revealing that Jimmy had waited 14 hours to inform them, a delay they found deeply suspicious. They painted a picture of Jimmy as a controlling husband who isolated Amy from her family, forbidding contact with Caleb and themselves, and forcing her into a role of dependency as a homemaker. To them, Amy's death was not a voluntary act, but the result of something far darker, likely tied to Jimmy's need for control and his history of violence. The autopsy's finding of strangulation, combined with Jimmy's odd behavior, shifted the investigation toward a homicide theory. The autopsy report, while confirming asphyxiation by strangulation, couldn't immediately distinguish between suicide and murder. There were no clear defensive wounds on Amy's body, a point the defense would later use to argue she took her own life. However, the faint mark near her neck and the absence of typical hanging injuries, such as a broken neck or deep tissue damage, pointed investigators toward murder. The family's tension, evident in the heated argument at JR's hometown grill hours before Amy was found, coupled with Jimmy's controlling nature, became critical clues. Investigators began to scrutinize the dynamics of Jimmy and Amy's marriage, questioning whether his need for control had driven her to despair or if he had taken matters into his own hands. While Amy lay in the hospital, Caleb, her son from a previous relationship, was denied the chance to see his mother one last time, a heartbreaking consequence of Jimmy's isolation tactics. Amy's parents, devastated but determined, vowed to seek justice for their daughter. They provided police with details of Jimmy's oppressive behavior, insisting Amy was not suicidal. She was a devoted mother to Ashley and a woman seeking freedom through her secret affair with George. Amy's death left behind a haunting question. What truly happened in that basement on September 14? The answer would require a deeper investigation, one that would uncover Amy's hidden affair, place Jimmy at the center of suspicion, and set the stage for a legal battle to bring justice for a woman whose life ended too soon. As the investigation into Amy Allen's death deepened, detectives turned their attention to a small but pivotal piece of evidence: Amy's phone. This device, unassuming in appearance, held secrets that would unlock the truth about her final days. Recovered messages revealed a hidden world, a 3-year affair with George, a married man from the East Coast that Amy had kept concealed from Jimmy's watchful eyes. These texts were more than proof of infidelity. They were a window into Amy's soul, a woman desperate for freedom in a marriage suffocated by control. The family's tension, already evident through Amy's parents' accounts, now gained a new dimension: jealousy. These messages would become a cornerstone of the prosecution's case, fueling the legal battle to prove Amy's death was no accident. With the help of digital forensic experts, investigators recovered a trove of messages between Amy and George, spanning from 2015 to the day of her death. Some texts had been deleted, a testament to Amy's efforts to keep her affair hidden from Jimmy's scrutiny. The exchanges revealed a deep, emotional, and physical connection. "I love you," George wrote, and Amy responded, "I love you too." These words, sent in stolen moments away from Jimmy's control, showed Amy living a parallel life, one where she could escape the confines of her marriage. The messages weren't just sentimental, they were explicit, hinting at intimate encounters, including a hotel meeting in 2017. This affair was Amy's rebellion, a lifeline in a world where Jimmy dictated her every move. The messages from the 14th of September 2018, the day Amy was found unconscious, were particularly revealing. At 5:07 p.m., during a family dinner, George texted, "I wish we could be together right now." Amy replied at 5:29, "I'm so excited to see you again." These exchanges showed Amy's commitment to the relationship, even planning a future meeting in late October, a clear sign she had no intention of ending her life. As Jimmy later claimed. Most strikingly, Amy continued texting George during her argument with Jimmy at JR's hometown grill, right in front of her husband. This bold act, while a testament to her desire for freedom, was fraught with risk, given Jimmy's habit of monitoring her every action. Her distraction could have caught his attention, escalating the tension between them. The phone evidence directly contradicted Jimmy's narrative. In his interview with Detective Larry Rothman, Jimmy insisted Amy was incapable of an affair due to her introverted nature, even suggesting police check her phone records for unknown numbers to prove his point. But when confronted with the messages to George, Jimmy reacted with shock and disbelief, a response investigators suspected might be staged. His history of control, constantly texting Amy to check her location, suggested he could have suspected something was amiss, especially given her behavior at the bar. The messages painted a vivid picture of Amy as a woman yearning for love and connection, elements absent from her marriage, and stood in stark contrast to Jimmy's portrayal of her as a content, isolated wife. Amy's secret affair, uncovered through her phone, became a potential motive in the eyes of investigators. If Jimmy, with his controlling nature and history of violence, discovered or suspected Amy's infidelity, it could have triggered a violent reaction. The family's tension, already heightened by their bar argument, now had a new layer: betrayal. These messages not only illuminated Amy's emotional state, but also placed Jimmy at the center of suspicion, suggesting that her affair might have pushed him to a breaking point. The phone evidence, when presented in court, would become a pivotal piece of the legal battle, challenging Jimmy's claims and reinforcing the prosecution's case that Amy's death was not a suicide, but a murder driven by control and jealousy. As the investigation into Amy Allen's death intensified, the basement where she was found became the key to unraveling the truth. Jimmy's claim that Amy had taken her own life seemed increasingly implausible, especially given the basement's low 7-foot ceiling and Amy's 5'6" height. To test this theory, Detective Larry Rothman enlisted a forensic engineering lab to conduct a detailed experiment, recreating the scene with the extension cord. The results of this experiment would become one of the most damning pieces of evidence in the case, dismantling Jimmy's story and bolstering the prosecution's homicide theory, setting the stage for a legal battle to bring justice for Amy. The forensic experiment was conducted with meticulous precision, using a model of the Allen basement, complete with a 7-foot ceiling and an extension cord identical to the one found at the scene. Scientists tested whether a person of Amy's weight, approximately 140 pounds, could have harmed themselves by hanging in such a confined space. The results were unequivocal. The cord couldn't support Amy's weight without breaking or leaving clear marks, and her feet would have touched the ground, making self-strangulation impossible. Dr. Elizabeth Buck, who presented the findings in court, emphasized that the low ceiling rendered Jimmy's suicide narrative physically implausible. A forensic pathologist further confirmed that Amy's death was caused by homicide, not suicide, based on the faint neck mark and lack of typical hanging injuries. This evidence struck a devastating blow to Jimmy's account. The prosecution argued that if Amy couldn't have taken her own life in the basement, the only person present, Jimmy, was the likely culprit. The family's tension, evident in their bar argument, and Jimmy's controlling behavior, provided the context for a homicide theory. Investigators began to suspect that Jimmy's actions were driven by rage, possibly sparked by Amy's secret affair with George. The overturned litter box and extension cord, which Jimmy claimed were signs of Amy's desperate act, appeared more like a staged scene to cover up a crime. The forensic experiment also shed light on Jimmy's behavior at the scene. His insistence on Amy's suicide, coupled with his frustration when she was found alive, suggested he might have tried to stage the basement to look like a suicide. The lack of struggle marks, which the defense later used to argue for suicide, was countered by the prosecution's point that a controlled strangulation by someone stronger like Jimmy wouldn't necessarily leave such marks. Amy's secret affair, though not yet fully explored at this stage, added a potential motive. If Jimmy suspected her infidelity, it could have pushed him to act violently, consistent with his history of choking Caleb. When presented in court, the forensic experiment became an unassailable piece of evidence, undermining the defense's claim that Amy's death was a result of mental instability or alcoholism. Combined with Amy's parents' accounts of Jimmy's control and Caleb's testimony about past violence, the experiment positioned Jimmy as the primary suspect. It was not just a scientific breakthrough, but a turning point in the legal battle, bringing investigators closer to proving that Amy was murdered and that the man responsible was the husband who had controlled her life for so long. After Amy's death, the Allen household became a hollow shell, haunted by memories of a woman whose life ended too soon. But as investigators dug deeper, Jimmy Allen made a startling decision. He left Michigan, taking his daughter Ashley and their 5 cats back to Ocala, Florida, where they had lived before. Jimmy claimed this move was to seek comfort from his family, but investigators saw it differently, a potential attempt to flee the truth. The family's tension, Amy's secret affair, and the growing suspicions now followed Jimmy to Florida, where he tried to start anew, only to find the shadow of Amy's death looming over him, setting the stage for a legal reckoning. In Florida, Jimmy quickly settled into a new life. He moved in near his family, enrolled Ashley in a new environment, and, shockingly, began planning a new marriage. Just 2 years after Amy's death, Jimmy was engaged, with a wedding scheduled just days before his eventual arrest. His father, later testifying in court, described Jimmy as broken and empty after Amy's death, claiming the move was prompted by family persuasion, not an attempt to escape. But to investigators and Amy's family, this rapid reintegration into a normal life, complete with a new fiancé, suggested a man trying to erase the past or hide his guilt. While in Florida, Jimmy maintained contact with investigators, providing information when requested, but he never returned to Michigan to face the investigation head-on. He insisted on his innocence, claiming Amy's death was a tragic suicide, a story he stuck to from the beginning. However, the evidence, phone messages, forensic experiments, and Amy's parents' accounts painted a different picture. The family's tension, highlighted by Jimmy's control and past violence, suggested he was not the grieving husband he portrayed. His departure, in the eyes of Amy's family, was a betrayal of her memory, a sign that he was running from accountability. Amy's parents and Caleb were devastated by Jimmy's move. They believed Amy's death was no suicide, and his quick departure to Florida, followed by a new engagement, felt like a slap in the face. They continued to provide police with details of Jimmy's controlling behavior, emphasizing his isolation of Amy and his history of violence. Amy's secret affair with George, now known to investigators, further fueled their belief that Jimmy had a motive to kill her. His departure was seen as an attempt to evade scrutiny, to distance himself from the investigation closing in around him. On the 16th of October 2020, nearly 2 years after Amy's death, the law caught up with Jimmy. He was arrested in Florida just 5 days before his planned wedding. Extradited to Michigan to face an open murder charge, Jimmy's attempt to start over was shattered. His departure, though framed as a grieving husband's retreat, became indirect evidence against him, suggesting a man fleeing from guilt. The investigation, bolstered by phone evidence and forensic findings, was now ready to bring Jimmy to justice, marking a pivotal moment in the legal battle to hold him accountable for Amy's death. On the 16th of October 2020, nearly 2 years after Amy Allen's tragic death, the long arm of justice finally reached Jimmy Allen. In Ocala, Florida, where he had rebuilt a new life, planning a wedding just 5 days away with his fiancée, police descended on him with handcuffs. Jimmy was arrested on an open murder charge, a flexible accusation that allowed the jury to determine the degree of guilt from manslaughter to first-degree murder based on the evidence. Shocked and cuffed, he was extradited from Florida back to Michigan, where he would face a legal battle that would expose the dark underbelly of the Allen family. The tension within the family, Amy's secret affair, and Jimmy's controlling nature became the focal points of a trial that gripped the Tecumseh community as the fight for justice for Amy reached its climax. Jimmy's arrest marked a turning point in a case that had simmered for years. After Amy's death, he had fled Michigan with his daughter Ashley and their 5 cats, settling in Florida as if to erase the past. To investigators, this move wasn't about seeking solace, but about evading the truth. The evidence, phone messages, forensic experiments, and accounts from Amy's family had woven a tight net around Jimmy. Extradited to Michigan, he faced a staggering $10 million bond, reflecting the severity of the charge and the fear that he might flee again. Jimmy, who had painted himself as a devoted husband, now stood accused, forced to confront the reality that his actions on the 14th of September 2018 were under intense scrutiny. The open murder charge was a strategic move by prosecutor Angie Borders. Rather than pinning Jimmy to a specific crime like first-degree murder, it allowed the jury to weigh all possibilities, from an impulsive act to premeditated murder. The family's tension, revealed through Amy's parents' accounts, formed the backbone of the accusation. They described Jimmy as a domineering husband who isolated Amy, cutting her off from her son Caleb and her parents and forcing her into dependency. His behavior at the scene, tearless sobs, smashing a bowl of potato chips, and frustration when Amy was found alive suggested he wasn't the grieving husband he claimed to be, but a suspect with motive and opportunity. Jimmy's arrest in Florida, just before his wedding, stunned those around him. His father, later testifying in court, portrayed Jimmy as broken and empty after Amy's death, insisting the move to Florida was at the family's urging, not an escape. But to Amy's parents and investigators, his rapid attempt to start anew, complete with a new fiancée, reeked of a man running from guilt. For 2 years, in Florida, Jimmy had lived as if untouched by the tragedy, raising Ashley and planning a new chapter, as if Amy's death carried no legal consequences. This confidence shattered when he was cuffed, forced to face the suspicions that had been building since that fateful night. Upon extradition, Jimmy's defense attorney, Daniel Guerin, immediately proclaimed his client's innocence, arguing that Jimmy had fully cooperated with police, providing phone records and details about the day of the incident. But the evidence against him, the forensic experiment proving Amy couldn't have died by suicide, the messages revealing her affair with George, and the family's accounts of his control was overwhelming. Amy's secret affair became a potential motive, suggesting Jimmy may have acted out of jealousy. The arrest and charge set the stage for a high-stakes legal battle, where the truth about Amy's death would be laid bare, and Jimmy would face the consequences of his controlling and potentially violent nature. When the trial of Jimmy Allen began in September 2021, prosecutor Angie Borders stepped into the Tecumseh courtroom with the confidence of someone armed with irrefutable evidence. In a room charged with tension, Borders laid out a compelling case. Jimmy Allen, a controlling husband with a history of violence, murdered Amy Allen in a fit of rage, possibly triggered by discovering or suspecting her 3-year affair with George. The prosecution's argument wove together physical evidence, family dynamics, and Jimmy's suspicious behavior, painting a vivid picture of a marriage defined by control and betrayal. The family's tension, Amy's secret affair, and the fight for justice became the pillars of a case that aimed to prove Amy's death was no suicide, but a calculated act of murder. Borders began by portraying Jimmy as an oppressive husband who controlled every facet of Amy's life. Amy's parents testified that Jimmy isolated her from her family, banning contact with her son Caleb and her parents, and forcing her into the role of a dependent homemaker. Whatever Jimmy wanted, Jimmy got. Borders quoted Amy's parents, emphasizing that Amy had no voice in their marriage. This control set the stage for the tragedy, with the argument at JR's hometown grill on the 14th of September 2018 acting as the spark. When Jimmy proposed moving back to Florida and Amy resisted, Borders argued his control was challenged, especially as Amy texted her lover George right in front of him, fueling his rage. The phone evidence was central to the prosecution's case. Borders presented the recovered messages between Amy and George, revealing a 3-year affair filled with love and plans for a future meeting. "I wish we could be together right now," George texted at 5:07 p.m. on September 14, to which Amy replied, "I'm so excited to see you again." These messages, especially Amy's texting during the bar argument, suggested to Borders that Jimmy may have suspected her infidelity, providing a motive for murder. The prosecution argued that if Jimmy, with his history of monitoring Amy's every move, noticed her distraction, it could have pushed him to a breaking point, transforming his control into violence. The forensic experiment, presented by Dr. Elizabeth Buck, was the prosecution's knockout punch. The lab's recreation of the basement scene, with its 7-foot ceiling and extension cord, proved Amy couldn't have hanged herself. Her feet would have touched the ground, and the cord wouldn't have held her weight. A forensic pathologist confirmed Amy's death was homicide, citing the faint neck mark and lack of typical hanging injuries. Borders used this to dismantle Jimmy's suicide narrative, arguing that he was the only person present with the opportunity to kill Amy. The family's tension, highlighted by the bar argument and Jimmy's control, provided the context for a violent reaction. Jimmy's behavior at the scene was another key element. Borders described his tearless sobs, smashing a bowl of potato chips, and frustration when Amy was found alive as signs of a man staging a scene to cover his guilt. "This is not the behavior of a grieving husband," she argued, "but of someone trying to manipulate the narrative." Caleb's testimony about Jimmy choking him years earlier reinforced the prosecution's claim that Jimmy had a history of violent strangulation, matching Amy's cause of death. Amy's secret affair, the family's tension, and the forensic evidence converged to form a compelling case that Jimmy killed Amy, driven by control and possibly jealousy, in a moment that would define the legal battle for justice. In the packed Tecumseh courtroom in September 2021, defense attorney Daniel Guerin rose to defend Jimmy Allen against a mountain of prosecution evidence. With sharp conviction, Guerin argued that Amy Allen's death was not murder, but a tragic suicide, rooted in her mental instability and alcoholism. The defense's argument sought to reframe the family's tension, portraying Amy as a troubled woman consumed by an illusory affair with George, ultimately leading her to end her life. In this high-stakes legal battle, Guerin aimed to dismantle the prosecution's case, questioning their motives and evidence while insisting on Jimmy's innocence. Guerin began by challenging the prosecution's motive. After 15 years of marriage, why would Jimmy suddenly kill his wife? He asked, arguing there was no direct evidence Jimmy knew of Amy's affair with George before her death. The defense framed the affair as an illusion Amy used to escape her isolated, unhappy life, noting that it involved only 2 in-person meetings over 3 years. Rather than jealousy, Guerin portrayed Amy as an alcoholic who became aggressive when drunk, suggesting she acted impulsively in the basement. He leaned on Ashley's testimony, who claimed Amy was a heavy drinker who turned unlike herself when intoxicated. Ashley's testimony was a cornerstone of the defense. Initially, in 2018, she described the family as normal and Amy as stable. But at trial, she shifted her story, claiming Amy was an alcoholic who became aggressive when drunk. "My mom drank a lot and would get out of character," Ashley testified, supporting the defense's suicide narrative. The prosecution countered that Amy's blood alcohol level was only 0.09% equivalent to 2 to 3 drinks, hardly indicative of alcoholism, undermining Ashley's credibility. Her changed story, possibly influenced by Jimmy, highlighted the family's tension, with Ashley caught between loyalty to her father and memories of her mother. Guerin also called on a defense expert, Dr. Francisco J. Diaz, to counter the prosecution's forensic experiment. Diaz argued that the lack of hemorrhaging in Amy's neck muscles, absence of petechiae, and no defensive wounds aligned more with suicide than murder. He suggested that if Jimmy had attacked Amy, there would have been signs of a struggle, which were absent. Guerin used this to argue the prosecution relied on speculation rather than concrete evidence, insisting there was no direct link tying Jimmy to Amy's death. The defense framed Jimmy's behavior at the scene, tearless sobs, smashing a bowl as a natural reaction to shock and grief, not guilt. Jimmy's phone search history, involving Jim Carrey movies and Showtime programs, was presented as evidence of his normalcy before finding Amy, countering claims of premeditation. Guerin painted Jimmy as a husband trying to hold his family together, facing a wife struggling with alcoholism and isolation. By reframing Amy's affair and the family's tension, the defense sought to cast doubt on the prosecution's narrative, arguing that Amy's death was a tragic act of despair, not a murder driven by Jimmy's control or jealousy. As the trial of Jimmy Allen reached its peak in September 2021, the Tecumseh courtroom became a battleground of conflicting testimonies, each one a piece of the puzzle in Amy Allen's death. Witnesses from Caleb to Ashley, George, and experts offered perspectives that illuminated the family's tension, Amy's secret affair, and the legal fight for justice. These testimonies not only bolstered the prosecution's case, but also challenged the defense, shaping the jury's final verdict in a case that gripped the community. Caleb, Amy's son from a previous relationship, was a pivotal prosecution witness. He recounted a chilling incident from years earlier, when he lived with Jimmy and Amy. During an argument, Caleb pushed Jimmy against a wall, but Jimmy retaliated by pinning him down and choking him from behind. "I was choked on the floor for what felt like forever," Caleb testified, describing the struggle to breathe and fear for his life. This testimony, leveraged by prosecutor Angie Borders, established Jimmy's history of violent strangulation, aligning with Amy's cause of death. The family's tension, marked by Jimmy's control over Caleb and Amy, became a central theme, suggesting he could have acted similarly toward Amy. Ashley, Jimmy and Amy's daughter, offered a conflicting perspective. In 2018, she described the family as normal and Amy as stable. But at trial, she claimed Amy was an alcoholic who became aggressive when drunk. "My mom would drink too much and act unlike herself," Ashley said, supporting the defense's suicide narrative. The prosecution countered that Amy's 0.09% blood alcohol level didn't indicate alcoholism, suggesting Ashley's changed testimony might reflect Jimmy's influence. Her words underscored the family's tension, with Ashley torn between her father's defense and her mother's memory. George, Amy's secret lover, was a surprise prosecution witness. He confirmed their 3-year affair, marked by 2 in-person meetings and countless affectionate texts. On the day of Amy's death, he texted, "I wish we could be together right now." And Amy replied, "I'm so excited to see you again." These messages, especially those sent during the bar argument, suggested to the prosecution that Jimmy may have suspected Amy's infidelity, providing a motive. George's testimony brought Amy's secret affair to the forefront, framing it as a desperate bid for freedom in a controlling marriage. Officer Ben J. Horn and EMTs provided critical scene details. Horn described Jimmy's odd behavior, tearless sobs, smashing a bowl, and frustration when Amy was found alive as signs of staging. EMTs noted the faint neck mark and lack of typical hanging injuries, casting doubt on the suicide claim. Dr. Elizabeth Buck presented the forensic experiment, proving Amy couldn't have hanged herself due to the low ceiling, supporting the homicide theory. Dr. Francisco J. Diaz, the defense expert, argued the lack of defensive wounds aligned with suicide, but his testimony couldn't overcome the prosecution's forensic evidence. Amy's parents' accounts presented indirectly highlighted Jimmy's control, isolating Amy and abusing Caleb, reinforcing the prosecution's case. These testimonies, combined with physical evidence, created a gripping legal battle, unraveling the truth about Amy's death and pointing toward Jimmy's guilt. After days of intense arguments in September 2021, the Tecumseh courtroom fell silent as the jury retired to deliberate. The Allen family's tension, Amy's secret affair, and the legal battle for justice converged in 6 grueling hours of deliberation. The evidence, forensic experiments, phone messages, Caleb's testimony, and Jimmy's odd behavior left the jury with a daunting question. Was Jimmy Allen a murderer, or was Amy's death a tragic suicide? When the jury returned, their verdict delivered justice for Amy, but left lingering questions about Jimmy's true motives. After 6 hours, the jury found Jimmy Allen guilty of second-degree murder, a lesser charge than first-degree murder, but a clear statement that he was responsible for Amy's death. The verdict reflected their belief that Jimmy acted in a moment of rage or impulse, possibly driven by jealousy over Amy's affair, but without clear evidence of premeditation. The forensic experiment, proving Amy couldn't have died by suicide, Caleb's testimony about Jimmy's violent choking, and the phone messages with George outweighed the defense's claim of Amy's instability. The family's tension, marked by Jimmy's control, became the backdrop for the verdict, confirming he wasn't the grieving husband he claimed to be. On the 21st of October 2021, Jimmy stood for sentencing. The judge handed down a 2-0 to 4-5-year prison term at the St. Louis Correctional Facility in Michigan, with parole possible in 2040. As the verdict was read, Jimmy appeared dazed, pacing aimlessly in the courtroom, unable to grasp the reality of his fate. He turned to investigators, muttering, "This is how you sleep at night," a bitter jab at the process. For Amy's family, her parents, and Caleb, the sentence was a bittersweet victory, acknowledging that Amy didn't take her own life. Yet, the pain of her loss lingered, unhealed by the verdict. The verdict left some questions unanswered. No direct evidence proved Jimmy knew of Amy's affair before her death, leaving his motive, jealousy, or another impulse somewhat ambiguous. The affair, central to the prosecution's case, wasn't enough for a first-degree murder conviction, leading to the second-degree charge. The family's tension, illuminated by Jimmy's control and Caleb's testimony, convinced the jury of his guilt, but the exact events in the basement remained shrouded in mystery. The trial, with its scientific evidence and emotional testimonies, brought closure but also reflection on what might have been prevented. In the aftermath, Tecumseh buzzed with discussions about the case, a reminder that even perfect-seeming families hide dark secrets. Jimmy, now behind bars, maintains his innocence, but no new evidence supports an appeal. For Ashley, caught between her father and her mother's memory, the verdict was a new wound. For Caleb and Amy's parents, it was a step toward justice, though it couldn't bring Amy back. The legal battle, with its clash of testimonies and evidence, had ended, but Amy's story, a woman seeking freedom in a suffocating marriage, remained a haunting reminder of the cost of control and the power of justice. On the 21st of October 2021, the Tecumseh courtroom was thick with tension as Jimmy Allen stood before the judge to receive his sentence. After a grueling trial that laid bare the dark secrets of the Allen family, the jury had found Jimmy guilty of second-degree murder in the death of his wife, Amy Allen. This moment marked the culmination of a 3-year legal battle, one that exposed the suffocating control, hidden betrayal, and simmering tension that defined their marriage. As the judge's gavel fell, pronouncing a sentence of 20 to 45 years in the St. Louis Correctional Facility in Michigan, with parole eligibility in 2040, a sense of justice settled over the room. But for Amy's family, the victory was bittersweet, a step toward closure that could never erase the pain of losing her. The family's tension, Amy's secret affair, and the relentless pursuit of justice had finally brought Jimmy to account, but the scars of the tragedy lingered. The second-degree murder conviction reflected the jury's belief that Jimmy acted in a moment of rage or impulse, possibly driven by jealousy over Amy's affair with George, but without the clear premeditation required for a first-degree murder charge. Prosecutor Angie Borders, though hoping for a harsher verdict, saw the outcome as a triumph. The forensic experiment, which proved Amy couldn't have died by suicide in the low-ceilinged basement, Caleb's chilling testimony about Jimmy's past violence, and the text messages revealing Amy's affair with George had dismantled Jimmy's claim of a tragic suicide. The family's tension, underscored by Jimmy's controlling behavior, became the backdrop for the verdict, confirming that he was not the devoted husband he portrayed, but a man capable of deadly violence. As the judge read the sentence, the courtroom was a study in contrasts. Amy's parents and Caleb, present to witness the moment, sat in quiet resolve. For them, the sentence was more than punishment. It was validation that Amy's death was not her choice, as the defense had argued. Amy's parents, who had lost contact with her due to Jimmy's isolation tactics, felt a flicker of solace, knowing their daughter's memory was honored. Caleb, who had endured Jimmy's violence and witnessed his mother's isolation, sat with tear-filled eyes, relieved that justice had been served, yet haunted by the loss of his mother. The sentence, though just, could not fill the void left by Amy's absence, a wound that would never fully heal. Amy's secret affair with George, uncovered through her phone, played a pivotal role in the conviction. The prosecution had argued that Jimmy's discovery or suspicion of the affair could have sparked his rage, especially given Amy's bold texting at the bar on the 14th of September 2018. While no direct evidence proved Jimmy knew of the affair before her death, the messages showed Amy's desire for freedom, contradicting the defense's portrayal of her as a suicidal alcoholic. The family's tension, evident in the bar argument where Amy resisted Jimmy's plan to move to Florida, provided the context for a violent outburst. The sentence, with a minimum of 20 years, underscored the severity of the crime, while the possibility of parole after 2 decades left open a faint hope for Jimmy's future, though one he would face behind bars. As the sentence was pronounced, all eyes turned to Jimmy. He stood motionless, his face a mask of detachment, as if struggling to process the weight of his new reality. The man who had once controlled every aspect of his family's life now faced decades in confinement, stripped of the power he once wielded. For the Tecumseh community, the sentence was a reminder that even the most picture-perfect families could harbor deadly secrets. The legal battle, fueled by scientific evidence and raw emotion, had reached its conclusion, But Amy's story, a woman trapped in a controlling marriage, seeking freedom through a secret affair, continued to resonate, a haunting testament to the consequences of control and the enduring fight for justice. As the judge's gavel struck on the 21st of October 2021, sealing Jimmy Allen's fate with a 2-0 to 4-5-year sentence, the Tecumseh courtroom held its breath. Jimmy stood before the judge, his face blank, but beneath the surface, a storm of emotions churned. The verdict had shattered the facade of the devoted husband he had carefully crafted, exposing the controlling and potentially violent man who investigators believed killed Amy. His reaction in the moments that followed, a mix of disorientation, cryptic remarks, and quiet defiance, offered a glimpse into a man grappling with the consequences of his actions. The family's tension, Amy's secret affair, and the legal battle for justice had stripped away his defenses, leaving Jimmy to face a future behind bars and a community questioning his true nature. In the immediate aftermath of the sentencing, Jimmy didn't erupt in tears or pleas, as some defendants might. Instead, he paced aimlessly in the courtroom, his eyes vacant, as if unable to comprehend that he would spend decades in prison. This disorientation was a stark contrast to the confidence he had displayed during the investigation, where he answered questions with calculated clarity. The man who once controlled every detail of his family's life now seemed lost, his carefully constructed narrative crumbling under the weight of the evidence. His behavior, though subtle, reinforced the prosecution's view that Jimmy was not a grieving husband, but a man struggling to accept that his control had been stripped away not just over Amy, but over his own fate. In a moment that stunned those in the courtroom, Jimmy turned to the investigators who had built the case against him and uttered a cryptic remark. "This is how you sleep at night." The words, laced with bitterness, seemed to cast blame on the investigative process, as if Jimmy believed he was a victim of an overzealous pursuit. To prosecutor Angie Borders, this was a final act of defiance, a refusal to accept responsibility for Amy's death. For Amy's family, her parents, and Caleb, the remark was a chilling near admission, a glimpse into a man who could not face the truth of his actions. The family's tension, marked by Jimmy's history of control and violence, provided the context for his reaction, suggesting a man more concerned with his own image than with remorse for Amy's loss. Jimmy's reaction also raised questions about his true feelings for Amy. Throughout the trial, he had portrayed himself as a dedicated husband, claiming he tried to help Amy overcome her isolation and addiction to World of Warcraft. But his actions at the scene, tearless sobs, smashing a bowl of potato chips, and frustration when Amy was found alive contradicted this image. Amy's secret affair with George, which may have wounded his pride, didn't elicit visible remorse in Jimmy's reaction to the verdict. Instead, his pacing and cryptic remarks suggested a man wrestling with exposure, not just as a murderer, but as a husband whose control had driven his family to ruin. The legal battle had laid bare the truth, leaving Jimmy with nowhere to hide. Defense attorney Daniel Guerin, despite the loss, continued to assert Jimmy's innocence, arguing that the verdict relied on speculation rather than direct evidence, particularly regarding the jealousy motive. But Jimmy's reaction, his aimless pacing, and bitter words did little to bolster Guerin's efforts. To the Tecumseh community, his behavior was a sign of arrogance, a man unable to accept that his actions, from control to violence, had led to Amy's death. The legal battle, with its forensic evidence and emotional testimonies, had closed, but Jimmy's reaction left a lingering question. Was he truly innocent, as he claimed, or simply unable to confront the reality of his guilt? His words and demeanor became a final, haunting note in a case that exposed the devastating cost of control and betrayal. As the prison gates of the St. Louis Correctional Facility in Michigan closed behind Jimmy Allen, the story of Amy Allen's death entered a new chapter, one where justice had been served, but the wounds remained raw. As of 2025, Jimmy is serving his 2-0 to 4-5-year sentence, with the earliest possibility of parole in 2040. Once a man who controlled every aspect of his family's life, he now lives in confinement, stripped of the power he once wielded over Amy. The family's tension, Amy's secret affair, and the legal battle for justice have left lasting consequences, not just for Jimmy, but for Ashley, Caleb, and Amy's parents, who continue to grapple with the pain of loss and the unanswered questions that linger in the aftermath of the tragedy. In prison, Jimmy maintains his innocence through his attorney, Daniel Guerin. In rare communications, he describes his life behind bars as a struggle to hold on to his belief in his own innocence. He and Guerin have filed appeals, arguing that the conviction rested on circumstantial evidence rather than definitive proof, particularly regarding the motive of jealousy over Amy's affair. However, the overwhelming evidence, the forensic experiment proving Amy couldn't have died by suicide, Caleb's testimony about Jimmy's violent past, and the phone messages with George makes a successful appeal unlikely. The family's tension, underscored by Jimmy's controlling nature, continues to cast a shadow over his claims, as he remains a man defined by the control he once exerted, now confined by the consequences of his actions. Ashley, Jimmy, and Amy's daughter, bears the heaviest burden of the tragedy. A teenager during the trial, she was torn between loyalty to her father and memories of her mother. Her testimony, which shifted from describing Amy as stable in 2018 to calling her an alcoholic at trial, may have been influenced by Jimmy's sway over her. After his imprisonment, Ashley was taken in by Jimmy's family in Florida, where she continues to navigate a life without either parent. The family's tension, once a daily reality for her, has left lasting scars, forcing her to reconcile her father's conviction with her memories of a mother who loved her deeply. Her journey remains a painful reminder of the collateral damage of the tragedy. Caleb and Amy's parents, the closest to her heart, carry the weight of grief and loss. For Caleb, who endured Jimmy's violence and witnessed his mother's isolation, the conviction was a validation that Amy didn't choose to end her life. Amy's parents, who provided critical details about Jimmy's control, view the sentence as a step toward justice, though it cannot bring their daughter back. Amy's secret affair, once a shocking revelation, is now understood as her desperate attempt to find freedom and love in a suffocating marriage. They honor her memory through small memorials and maintain close contact with Caleb, keeping her spirit alive amid their sorrow. The Tecumseh community continues to reflect on the case, a stark reminder that even seemingly perfect families can hide deadly secrets. The Allen case is more than a true crime story. It's a cautionary tale about control, betrayal, and the consequences of unchecked actions. Jimmy's current status, a prisoner facing decades in confinement, is a testament to the cost of his behavior, while Amy's memory endures as a symbol of resilience and the fight for justice. The legal battle, with its scientific evidence and emotional weight, brought closure, but it also left the community grappling with the lessons of a tragedy that could have been prevented, a haunting echo of a life cut short, and a family torn apart.